Welcome to Rapid Report. I'm your host, and today we're diving into the South China Sea where tensions are boiling over. Is this the start of a new Cold War between the US and China? Let's break it down in 3 minutes. The South China Sea is a powder keg. $3.36 trillion in trade flows through here yearly, a third of global maritime trade. But China claims almost all of it with its 9-dash line, a claim rejected by a 2016 international tribunal. Tensions are skyrocketing. On March 31st, a Philippine Coast Guard plane spotted a massive Chinese military base on Mischief Reef in the Spratly Islands, a disputed zone also claimed by Vietnam and Malaysia. Just weeks ago, China parked 2 H-6 bombers near Scarborough Shoal, sending a clear message as U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited Manila. The U.S. isn't backing down, calling China's actions destabilizing. They've ramped up support for allies like the Philippines. In February 2025, the U.S., Australia, Japan, and the Philippines held their first joint naval patrol in the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone. But China's not slowing down. Last August, they rammed Philippine vessels with water cannons, prompting President Marcos Jr. to warn that such actions are very close to an act of war. The U.S. says its defense treaty with the Philippines covers the South China Sea, raising fears of a direct U.S.-China clash. Is this a new Cold War? Some say yes. U.S.-China rivalry mirrors the U.S.-Soviet standoff, with proxy conflicts and military buildups. China's upgraded its Triton Island base with radar to track stealth aircraft, while the U.S. pushes allies like NATO to counter China's systemic challenges. Meanwhile, China's aligned with Russia, North Korea, and Iran, forming a bloc that's solidifying global alliances much like the Cold War's divided world. But regional players aren't just pawns. ASEAN nations are pushing back. The Philippines and Vietnam are teaming up, signing deals in January 2025 to boost Coast Guard cooperation. Indonesia and China also signed a joint maritime development deal in November 2024 near the Natuna Islands, despite overlapping claims. Yet China's militarization of artificial islands, like Subi Reef, keeps tensions high. Posts on social media show China's Coast Guard and militia blocking Philippine vessels at 2nd Thomas Shoal, a tactic called gray zone warfare to dominate without open conflict. The stakes are massive. 11 billion barrels of oil, 193 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and 10% of global fisheries are at risk. A conflict here could cost the global economy $2.7 trillion in the first year, per the Institute for Economics and Peace. Taiwan, Singapore, and Vietnam would be hit hardest, with economies shrinking up to 33%. The South China Sea's Strait of Malacca is a choke point. 80,000 vessels pass through yearly, carrying $4.9 trillion in goods. A blockade could cripple global trade from Japan to Europe. So what's the endgame? Diplomacy is key. Experts urge a South China Sea code of conduct to reduce friction, but talks are stalled. Some fear a maritime empire under China, while others see the U.S. as escalating tensions. The reality? Both powers need to accept international law to avoid war. But with China rejecting rulings and the U.S. pushing its rules-based order, the South China Sea remains a flashpoint, potentially the defining battleground of a new Cold War. That's all for today on Rapid Report. Do you think the South China Sea will spark a new Cold War? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more